Hello there. In this video I will show you a case where I actually made a custom validation of the federal tax ID, where I have made some custom rules saying that it should be 10 characters long and it also should always start with an A. It's a dummy sample, it's held quite easy, so it's easy to understand. But in the same time I will also show the sample on how to actually work with creating that SQL that need to be done in order to make this federal tax ID, and some tips and tricks on how to get it, be able to make sure that it's correct and make it fast and easy. So very quickly, a demo of the sample. If I don't put anything in, it doesn't validate. If I put in something that is 10 long and start with an A, it says it's okay, while if I put anything additional in, it will say federal tax ID is not valid. So the validation is quite simple, in order that we simply validate the field item 41 on form type 134. The SQL we'll come to, but in case the SQL is not valid, we simply do a short message saying the federal tax ID is not valid. So nothing fancy so far. So here are the SQL, and we of course use the dynamic syntax in order to make this validation. But you should never start writing your SQL in here. You should always start your SQL in either query generator if you don't have any additional options, or the most preferred way is to go into SQL Management Studio. So let me start that. So we have SQL Management Studio, and I will log into my database here and paste in my SQL that I'm going to use. I'm not writing this from scratch for time concerns, but let's quickly have a look at how I actually make normally my SQL in order to make it better work for the system. First of all, in case of this SQL, there's three conditions. There's the condition that if we don't have anything, it's still valid, and if we have something, it should either be if it's not 10 characters long, or if it's not starts with an A, that's when we go in and say it's not valid. But as you can see, instead of putting in this all three places here, this would be just as valid if I did this. It might look simpler, but in terms of testing it, it's annoying, because in Management Studio, where we often start, we need to replace these with some different test scenarios so we can test that everything works. So instead, I'm normally doing this by declaring a value or a variable in SQL and putting in the entered value here. First of all, it makes the SQL down here much more easy to read if entered value different from nothing and length of entered value different from 10 or entered value. So there's not 41 all the time. Also, 41 is quite expensive compared to SQL to actually get out of the clients, because every time we meet one of these, we actually need to instantiate some data from the client, find out what it is. In this case, I actually only take it out one time and use it 3 times. Also, if I need to test it here, it's quite easy to just comment out this and put in a sample value saying 1, 2, 3, 4, and see that this gives not valid. My empty value, my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, and my different values in here. And so whenever I need to make a SQL, I go to the Management Studio, write out my SQL just as I would in the system, and it's only at the very end I'd say, okay, now my entered value are transferred into the dynamic syntax and put into Business One. So in this way, you will be able to much faster find bugs in your SQL and go about it. Do it. Also in Business One, of course, if you don't have the SQL already, you can always go to have the no condition and just do some kind of dummy message saying in order to test your trigger. So these were a few tips and tricks on doing this. If you at some point are brand new to SQL, you can also use what we have here, the common SQL structures, that can actually help you in order to make some of the simple conditions. They simply you can just choose it, and all you need to put in is the Boolean expression and the action for a very simple SQL. But of course, SQL is very important to know in order to make validations, and it's key, and this goes beyond the scope of what we do in our sessions here. But the tips and tricks on actually making it performant and making it easy to create and find the issues is, in my mind, the SQL Management Studio. So I will definitely recommend that. So with that, I will end the session, and hopefully you will be able to create a lot of conditions with the SQL and the functionality. For reference, here is the SQL, and I will try to paste in the SQL into the video notes as well. Okay, thank you for listening.